Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Daily reading of Lord Meher, the biography of the Avatar of the Age, Meher Baba, Volume 1 by Culture. Continuation of chapter on Tajuddin Baba in his early years in Nagpur, starting from page number 44. Some moments before the striking young man had arrived, Tajuddin had lost his temper with the crowd and was angrily abusing all those in his presence. But upon seeing the young man, his mood suddenly changed to a pleasing manner. Tajuddin had gotten up from his seat immediately, limping when he walked to greet the young man. The fairy mood of Qutub had been altered upon his young man's arrival. It was as if he had brought the master some joyous news. The individual was no stranger to Tajuddin Baba, however. He was the same Zoroastrian kissed by Babajan and whom Narayan Maharaj had royally greeted. The young man indeed brought good news to Tajuddin that day, news that he was preparing to accept the spiritual charge from Taj, assuming the crown of creation. Later, this man was always referred to by Tajuddin as the heavenly rose. In return, he would always refer to him as Taj, the crown. Around 1920, Tajuddin returned to Raja Bhosle's palace bungalow in Nagpur, though he would frequently visit Vicky Sharif. At this time, he would also roam on the outskirts of Nagpur as the Raja arranged his horse tonga excursions according to his wish. Raja Bose did everything possible in serving Tajuddin, trying his utmost to always please his master to the end. Tajuddin Baba enjoyed qawwalis, Persian and Urdu devotional songs to God. On one occasion at the Raja's place, a famous singer from Delhi named Janaki came to Nagpur and wished to sing to the saint. The distinguished lady was brought to the palace, but immediately upon seeing her, Tajuddin shouted, "Take that out of here! Get her out of my sight! She thinks she can charm like other worldly people with the sweetness of her voice. Get her out!" The woman was shocked, and Raja Bhosle had also promptly removed. Tajuddin was aflame. He ordered his tonga to be brought and then left for the riverside. It was raining heavily and the ground had turned to mud. Oblivious to the muddy condition, Tajuddin alighted and walked to the river's edge. There he sat contentedly by the flowing river water as it rained. Tajuddin's voice then spoke softly to his disciples. "Go and tell that singer from Delhi that if she is willing, she can come and sing to me here." Janaki was informed accordingly and she unhesitantly complied. Grateful at this unexpected opportunity, she had despaired was lost. She was taken in a tonga to the river, where, in spite of her beautiful silk sari, she waded through the mud and sat down near the Qutub. In the mud, she sang to Tajuddin for almost 3 hours in the splendor of the moonlight. Tajuddin then blessed her and sent her away. Janaki knew well that the master, by going to the riverside and testing whether she would go there, was letting her understand that it was he who was honoring her by allowing her to sing in his presence. Tajuddin lived his final years at Raja Bhosle's Red House. Once he had specified his burial place to be at another end of Nagpur. He had selected a particular spot where he himself had once picked up the earth and smelled it, remarking, "The soil of Hazrat, the Great One, is sweet. If a house is built here for me, I will remain in it." Tajuddin Baba dropped his body on August 17, 1925. While staying at the Raja's Red House, he gazed out upon our mad world for the last time and closed his eyes forever on his material space. The madness for his wine threw Nagpur into frenzy. Wine had poured through the streets, the asylum, and the Raja's place in Nagpur for nearly 45 years. The news of his death spread fast throughout the district, and his devotees felt as if their hearts had been torn out. The whole city mourned the loss of this their most holy tavern keeper, where he had poured wine, tears, now flooded. On the day he died, 30,000 to 40,000 people of all religions, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, Zoroastrian, Christian, marched in a huge funeral procession from one end of the city to the other. Tears of love flowed from their eyes, and every heart was weighed down with grave repentance and gratitude. Tajuddin Baba's tomb is now holy ground in Nagpur to the Mohammedans. Tajuddin was buried according to Islamic custom in that particular spot where he himself had selected. The area was later renamed Tajabad in his honor. Tajuddin Baba's body is buried there, but in reality, he is now in deep sleep. This deep sleep is the true awakening where the heart drinks its own tears when one becomes conscious of his own eternal infinity. O Tajuddin Baba, your wine still flows in our hearts. You showered roses and crowned our king. Page number 46, the chapter on Sai Baba, the Fakir of Allah. Sai Baba of Shirdi. His picture, which we normally see on a stone with his legs crossed, is on this page. And on page number 47, we start. Allah is the protector of the poor. There is nothing besides Him. The name of Allah is eternal. Allah is all in all. Thus, a bearded man wearing a ragged robe would cry out daily in Shirdi village. He would smoke a chillum pipe of opium in a consecrated mosque while people would scream by to pay their respects to him. As his blessing to each, he would say, give me your money. Give me whatever money you have in your pockets." They would have to let him have all their money. Often he would not even allow the people to know enough to keep enough to pay their train fare back home. Strange was this ragged ascetic who always asked for money, for by the end of the day he had given it all away to the poor and would wander the streets to beg for their food. He would beg only for bakri, unleavened brittle millet bread, and lived on that alone. The ascetic beggar was more often referred to as fakir. Once a naked child stood before that fakir, who innocently asked the mother, "Daughter, is it a boy or a girl?" Such was this fakir's innocence. He would often appear quite innocent of such things. When everyone would beseech him for something, the fakir would reply, "Allah Malik hai, God is the owner," meaning God is the only giver. This fakir's behavior was not normal. To say the least, it was considered hypocrisy and slanderous for a fakir to extract money from people. However, people did not mind giving their money to this particular fakir who gave it all to the poor. They had faith in him and gave him whatever he asked, and they considered themselves blessed if he asked for something from them. People would hear him say, "I only ask those from the fakir's points out. In exchange, I have to give them 10 times what they give me." The fakir he spoke of was none other than Almighty God. Was this fakir a Hindu or a Muslim? People of every religion and caste in India would go to him. The holy man was especially unique, for he belonged to no caste or religion or ism. The fakir was too poor and too great to belong to anything. Why would people journey hundreds of miles from all over the Indian subcontinent to see him? It was because of his eyes. The eyes of this fakir were said to be light. Some would say his eyes shine with more brilliance than the sun. They are magnetic. His eyes must be made of light. However one described them, it was those eyes that eventually attracted thousands to him. Upon looking into his eyes, one would bow in worship at his feet. Hidden in this extraordinary fakir was the Qutub-e-Irshad of the past age. The fakir was the head of the spiritual hierarchy and the leading perfect master of his time. He who held the key to all worlds and universes in his very hands appeared as a ragged beggar in a small village called Shirdi. In this beggar's hand, the conflicting forces of the world's turmoil and the throes universes were kept balanced. It may be difficult for a worldly minded materialistic to believe this, but it is a spiritual fact. If people were told this particular holy man was responsible for conducting or controlling the First World War, they would say it is ridiculous. But in the inner realms of spiritual realities, the Kutubs or Satgurus are the masters of the universe, and nothing even happens without their divine ordinance. The beggar's appearance was more deceiving. He was the mightiest king in heaven or on earth, but he did not care if people saw him merely as a beggar. Now the sun of his divinity had shed its light. He had done his duty. One must do this. To understand him, one must care to know. He who cares gains because of knowing him. To research the life of any man, a man become God or perfect master, is difficult, because when he is embroidered, when his sun is brightly shining, all eyes are focused on him. It is only after the sun sets that our attention shifts to recording this story. Without becoming a fakir, one can never fathom such a master's life. Whatever he reveals to the world is just a few rays of his light, and so the true story of every perfect one cannot be known in detail. That fakir of whom the world had come to know never even allowed his fellow men to know his family or childhood name. Age named him Sai, which means the Lord or the Holy One. Nothing is definitely known about his birth. Some believe that Sai was born into a Brahmin family, that his parents died and he was then raised by a Muslim ascetic. Some believe, however, that he was born in a Mohammedan family, and most biographers agree with this belief. Whatever the circumstances of his birth and childhood, they are lost as facts. One must concern oneself with Sai the master, not the man in whose eyes all are one. It is said that Sai was born in 1838 in Sailu village in the Jintur district of India, but other more recent evidence points to his birthplace as being in Patri village in the Parbhani district, and also it is said that his childhood was spent near Aurangabad in Maharashtra. One known fact, however, is that his parents were very, very poor. After his father's death, when he was still a young child, his mother was forced by circumstances to resort to begging for their maintenance. One might well wonder what sort of drama this is. He who was destined to be the Lord of the universe had to spend his childhood among the destitute, the homeless, begging on the street. What an unfathomable design by God, that the man through whom the world's destiny was to be guided was brought up in most pitiable destitution. One our age held the young boy's cry, "Mother, walk slowly. I cannot go faster. I cannot go on." And the mother lifted the boy in her arms with tears in her eyes. "Mother, I am hungry. When will someone kind give us food?" And his mother whispered, "Son, have patience. God is merciful. There is a village not far away where we will find bread." Sensing his mother's plight, the boy said, "Mother, I do not feel hungry anymore. I feel like walking now." He slipped down from his grasp and, though tired and weak, slowly walked behind her. In this manner, for 5 years, mother and son wandered from door to door, from village to village. With his sweet conversation, the boy kept his mother cheerfully distracted. Never again did the boy ask her mother for food or comfort. Blisters painfully tormented the soles of his feet until they roughened like leather as they walked on and on. The mother did not know where they were going. They begged, they moved on to survive. Mercy is always hidden in the apparent terribleness of God. Fate is a paradoxical mystery. The cruelty of God is in some way his mercy. No one can escape his compassion, whatever the circumstances. God's nature is mercy, and he is mercy itself. In his eyes, no one is helpless and without hope, but only those who become God fathom this mystery. Although mother and son were suffering in the eyes of the world, one cannot imagine what the 5-year-old boy was about to receive. After knocking on door after door in the village of Shelwadi and being turned away empty handed, the mother and son wandered to the door of a blind man who took them in. But this blind man was a saint. Gopal Rao Deshmukh was a famous Hindu saint in the area, and he embraced the boy so ardently it was as if after years of separation two old friends had been reunited once again. Indeed, the saint had been waiting for this woman and boy, and with great respect and love prepared a room in his own house for them to live with him permanently. There was nothing in the blind saint's house, no furniture or decoration, except a large life-size statue of Venkatesh, Lord Vishnu, which he would worship day and night. The saint's father was named Keshav Pant. Although a poor Hindu, Keshav was very religious or devout and was the root of Gopal Rao's spirituality. From childhood, inspired by his father, the flame of spirituality burned deeply in his heart. When it became time for Gopal Rao to earn his livelihood, he had failed to find a job in his birthplace of Jam, and so he had moved to Shelwadi. After he had lived in Shelwadi for some years, the local townspeople looked upon him with reverence. Although still a poor man himself, whatever he had, he would share with others more unfortunate and nurse the afflicted. In token of his selfless service, the town officials granted him a piece of land on which to live and grow food. Gopal Rao suffered a severe penance. One day, he gazed at a beautiful woman and began having unwelcome lustful desires. He was so struck by the depravity of his thoughts that he immediately returned to his home, and while standing before the statue of Venkatesh, poked out both of his eyes with an iron spike. The external light of the world was cut out forever, but this act caused the inner light within him to flame. The light within him became a fire, and his fire spread to distant places throughout India. It was said, the Lord Venkatesh himself prepares the arti tray for Gopal Rao. Only then does the saint perform the arti before the Lord. In this manner, the blind saint would worship his idol Venkatesh, and because of Gopal Rao's presence, Shelwadi turned from a farming village into a sacred place of pilgrimage. In the humble house of this blind saint, young Sai was brought up with great affection and love care. The many wounds of 5 years of begging healed. The saint's love for the boy grew more and more pronounced, while the mother served this blind man with deep respect. He had made a home for her and her son, and for this she was always grateful. When the boy was 12 years old, his mother died. With the snapping of the parental connection, the boy and blind saint lived in the same house together for several years. It was during this period that the boy had a spiritual world unveiled to him by the saint and became Gopal Das Rao's chief disciple. Observing this close association, the saint's Brahman disciples became resentful and envious of the boy, wondering why this master was so fond of this Muslim lad. As a result, they tried various ways of harassing the youth, but he would tolerate these meanness out of love for Gopal Rao. The situation worsened. Their jealousy made them violent and despicable, and some of them decided to murder the boy. They began plotting how to kill him, but he whom God wishes to protect, no one can touch a hair of his head, even if the whole world goes against him. He is safe. What jealousy can do? It turned a group of devotees into potential murderers. As a result, on one occasion when Gopal Rao was walking through the jungle forest accompanied by the boy, some of the devotees secretly followed him. As the saint and boy were resting under the shade of a tall tree, the man stealthily crept towards them and one threw a large stone at boy's head. But instead of hitting the boy, the stone struck Gopal Rao. Seeing his master suffer because of him, Sai's heart broke and wept tears of blood. He told Gopal Rao, Master, after all our years together, My staying with you is no good anymore. Let me leave this place. The saint replied, You cannot leave. From today, I have decided to make you my sole heir. One day, you will inherit my treasure. The man who tried to kill Sai became ill and suffered much before he died shortly thereafter. The village devotees were surprised at this man's sudden demise and believed that Gopal Rao had punished him for his wicked intent. One of the man's relatives went to the saint seeking forgiveness, and the rest of the devotees began praying in hope of reviving the dead man. Hearing this request, Gopal Rao told the relative, Why do you ask me to bring him back to life? I am just an ordinary man like yourself. I have no such power. I cannot do such a thing. Then, pointing to the boy, Gopal Rao added, Perhaps this Muslim lad can do it. As a sign from the saint, the boy rose and picking up some dirt from Gopal Rao's feet, rubbed it on the corpse. After a few minutes, the dead man came back to life and sat up. The village devotees were astonished. From this act of divine power, they realized that the boy's relationship with Gopal Rao was unique, and as the chief disciple of their master, the boy was to be honored instead of hated. In celebration of this resurrection, the villagers formed a long procession with the boy and Gopal Rao seated in a palanquin, while hundreds worshipped them both, showering flowers as they were carried through the town. Gopal Rao had been hinting for a few days that soon he would give up his body, but none of his devotees took his word seriously. One day he gathered all his close ones and told them, My time has come. The blind saint then allowed his disciples to bathe him. He had prayers read and section of Bhagavad Gita recited. He called the boy to him and lovingly gave him his own dhoti, a white cloth worn around the waist to the ankles. Then Sai reverently accepted. Gopal Rao imparted some final instructions to his disciple and lying down quietly severed his connection with his physical body. By handing over his robe to the youth, Gopal Rao transferred his spiritual charge with all its responsibilities and burdens to the boy. Sai thoroughly understood its significance. From the cloth of his master's dhoti, the youth had a kafni shirt and a turban for himself made, which he always wore. This Muslim lad would be called Sai. He was then just 16 years old. Soon after Gopal Rao's death, the young man left Shelwadi and sought seclusion in a forest. One day, a man named Chand Patel was passing through the forest when he came upon the young fakir seated under a tree. Without any introduction, the young man asked Chand Patel, Have you lost 2 horses? Startled, the man replied, Yes, but I have been unable to find them. Go to a nearby stream, said the young fakir, and you'll find them there. Chand left and was happily surprised to find them exactly where the young ascetic had indicated. When Chand returned to thank the fakir, he saw the youth filling his chilam with tobacco. Anxious to light the pipe for the fakir, Chand realized that he did not have any matches. The young man waved him away and, thrusting a stick in the ground, unearthed a piece of burning charcoal and held it to the pipe. This remarkable feat convinced Chand Patel that the young fakir was someone great and holy. He requested the young man to accompany him to the village of Shirdi, where he was journeying to attend his nephew's wedding, and the fakir agreed to join him. Shirdi was not a big or famous town then. The entire village turned out to welcome the visitors, little knowing what a distinguished guest they had among them. As the wedding procession passed by the Doba temple, a Hindu priest named Bhagat Malspati caught sight of the young fakir and called out for the first time to the words, Hey Sai, Ha Sai, welcome God, welcome. From that day on, the young fakir of only 16, whose name no one really knows, came to be known as Sai. The young fakir did not remain in Shirdi long, however, and began his wandering from place to place in Maharashtra, begging along the way. Finally, he wandered among the hills surrounding the ancient Ellora caves at Aurangabad, where he entered a small cave atop a hill in Khuladabad. At the bottom of the hill is the tomb of Sufi Qutub Zari Zar Baksh. This Qutub's tomb has been a favorite spot of Mohammedan pilgrims in the areas for over 700 years. Zari Zar Bakh was the master of Sai in a previous lifetime. Sai, inwardly drawn to be near his former master, entered a cave overlooking the tomb. Sai became God realized during this period and stayed in his cave for several years in the state of Mazubiyat, not even leaving for food or water. During these years, the strong, healthy physique of a young fakir turned into a living skeleton. The skeleton, however, had infinite light, as if Sai's flesh and bones had been transformed into light. But his emaciated fakir had lost his gross consciousness. He now had the body of a mature man, but he was a man who had no bodily consciousness. He had become a great realized majzub. Sai was fully conscious of himself as God, Anal Haq, but for over 4 years was completely oblivious of his own human body and the world around him. Yet it was necessary for Sai to leave that cave. He needed to regain his gross awareness to be able to fulfill his destiny to bring the ancient one into form. When Sai finally left the cave, he was emaciated, a living skeleton, inwardly drawn by the power of another perfect master. He wandered east to meet the Swami of Akhalkot, and by this Hindu Sadguru's grace, Sai regained normal human consciousness. In this village of Akhalkot, in the mountainous region of Ajanta, the fakir had now become Sai, a lord of the universe, a living perfect master, and his divine work on earth began. He was 20 years old. Sai wandered back in Shirdi in 1858. There he stayed, making this some humble village his permanent headquarters. At first, he seemed as if a new fakir had made his residence in Shirdi. He kept aloof from the villagers, spending his nights under a neem tree in all seasons. His bodily needs were minimal. Whatever food or tobacco he wanted, he begged for. The fakir preferred to be alone, and he made this known to anyone who invaded his solitude. It appeared he disliked the villagers. After living for some months under the neem tree, Sai moved into a small tin shed which served as a local mosque in the poor village. Sai renamed the mosque Dwarika Mai Masjid, the Mosque of the Mercy of Mother of Mercy. Here two men began faithfully serving him. One, the Hindu priest Malsa Pati, who named him Sai, and another named Tatya Kote. Many of the villagers were sarcastically referred to them as the trio of the masjid. At that time, Shirdi was a quiet farming village, but some years after Sai settled there, plague swept through the area and scores of persons died. The district officials tried everything to alleviate the epidemic, but nothing helped. Eventually, some people approached Sai, narrating their tales of woe and pleading with him to help before the entire population of Shirdi was wiped out. The fakir was moved by their stories and went to a nearby house, picked up a millstone, then returned to the Mother of Mercy mosque and started grinding wheat. Collecting the flour, he gave it to the woman with the instructions to sprinkle it along the boundaries of the village. The woman willingly did as she was told, and within a short time, to everybody's relief, the epidemic started to subside. Patients recovered, and Shirdi was completely free from the fatal effects of the plague. On frequent occasions, invalids and the deceased from the surrounding villages would come to the fakir, who treated them with medical herbs. Afterward, he would sit with these affected ones, listening to the devotional music they would sing. Each person was attached to him for one reason: light, in his eyes. The perfect master was all unique. If there was a physical characteristic that set him above other men, it was his eyes. The eyes of this perfect one was so luminous, with such power and deep penetration in his gaze, that he would look into them for long. One felt that he was reading one through and through, that nothing could be kept secret from that gaze. Once those eyes beheld one, that look was never forgotten. After seeing his face and eyes, people would only bow to him in worship as their Lord. Sai Baba begged for his food every day. Usually he would beg for only bread at 5 different houses in Shirdi. At each doorstep he would call out, "Mother, give me bakri," or "Mother, give me roti." He continued begging up to his last days in 1918. Sai ate only one of the two of the breads himself, distributing the rest to the poor. Thus His Majesty the king would eat only what was given in alms. According to Meher Baba, there was a secret behind Sai Baba's begging. The 5 houses represented the 5 masters, perfect masters, who are always living in the world, and at whose feet the whole universe begs for spiritual and material progress. Sai Baba had several strange personal habits besides being a heavy smoker. While begging, he would often stop along the way in secluded places or amidst a teeming bazaar and unabashedly lift his dhoti. After finishing, seeing him behave in this uncouth manner, some of the villagers as first took him to be mad, but even outward act of perfect masters, although sometimes enigmatic, is inwardly significant, because that their every action is for the benefit of the world. For instance, Sai Baba would take hours to receive as a relief. As the number of devotees increased, the act of attending to nature's transformed into a ceremony. He would go to yet this while I pass. Sai Baba had a Gauss type of spiritual personality. The Gauss type of master is rare. Once a man went to a mosque where Sai Baba slept and found the physical limbs of the master's body hanging separately on the floor. In one corner was the master's hand and arms, in another legs and feet, and in another corner his head. Every limb was separated from the torso. The poor man was aghast. Terrified, he thought of notifying the village police that the fakir had been murdered, hacked to pieces, but he feared that the police might implicate him in the crime, and so he went home out of his wits as to what to do. The next morning, the disturbed man anxiously went to the mosque. To his shocked surprise, he found Sai Baba alive, giving a discourse to some of his devotees, and he wondered if what he had seen the previous evening had been a nightmarish dream. The man did not know about this rare characteristic of a fakir. At times, for their inner work, perfect masters enter the Gauss state and parts of their physical body separate. When that particular phase of work is finished, their body automatically joins together again. There is another story of a man who witnessed Sai Baba disembowering himself. The fakir slept alone, and each night he entered the gnosis state. It is said that Sai Baba slept on the bed about 6 feet off the ground, but there was no ladder. Only once, when he had gone to retire to their room, a man quietly crept to the window to see Sai levitate to his bed, but he was aghast to see a body without arms, without legs, and without a head. Instantly the man was blinded, and his blindness served as a source of repentance for the rest of his life. Sai Baba was a person of great humor. He would often joke with his devotees and even poke fun at their weaknesses. However, until he died, he retained the austere aesthetic life of a fakir. He would call God a poor fakir also, and since God is poor, I am poor. He wore the same kafani shirt until he was so torn and tattered that one of his disciples had to forcibly remove it from him and gave him a new one to wear. Even after that, Sai often sat with a needle and thread, patiently repairing it. This was the same garment given to him in his youth by Gopal Rao. Later, when he was completely in shreds, he sewed the pieces together and made a turban handkerchief which he wore around the head. Sai Baba blended his unique personality of Hindu and Mohammedan characteristics and had followers from both faiths. He never forbade any Muslims from eating meat and sometimes ordered Brahman priests to give up vegetarianism and eat food against their wish. On a rare occasion, he himself would cook meat dishes and distribute the food to those gathered. Although his eyes were always intense and lustrous, his nature was cordial. His personal habits were austere, but his ashram compounded always informal and compound was always informal and lively. His personality was sweet-tempered and tolerant, although at times he was a jalali or fiery and would become enraged at someone's failures. As aspects of Sai Baba's Jalali side was portrayed by a pet he had, a tiger. For some years, the tiger lived with Sai Baba at Shirdi and would accompany him in his walks. The tiger was his pet as an ordinary man would have a dog or a cat. When the tiger died, he it it was buried at Sai by Sai at his own tomb. When people came for Sai Baba's darshan, it was quite common for him to demand that they empty their purse or pockets of their money and give it to him as dakshina, a monetary gift to the master. But if anyone approached him with material desires, Sai would say, Allah Malik hai, meaning in his instance, God is the giver. Sai Baba kept a pail of small stones near his own large stone seat, and he would pick up a stone and throw it at whoever came for his darshan. Although miracles happened to many people, those who were hit by the stones did receive his blessings and became Sai's real devotees. In 1886, Sai Baba suffered from a severe asthma attack and told his disciples, Malsapati, protect my body for 3 days. If I return, it will be all right. If my body does not return to life, bury it and plant 2 flags over the grave. Sai then closed his eyes and entered a state of samadhi, appearing to be dead. His breathing and pulse stopped completely, and his body remained lifeless for 3 days and nights. Some of the master's devotees were grief stricken, believing that master had died. They wanted to perform the last rites, but the faithful disciple Malsapati prevented them by cradling Sai Baba's body in his lap, exactly as Sai had foretold. After 72 hours, his eyes slowly reopened as he re entered his body, but he did not speak of the work he had done while he was in that state or why he entered that samadhi. A close disciple who was always seated in Sai Baba's court was named Bara Baba, which means Big Baba. He was a huge fat man. Sai Baba would give Bara Baba 100 rupees per day for his food, and the man would eat and eat, dining for several hours. Sai Baba would eat only the bhakris and raw onion that he had begged for, while Bara Baba would eat plateful after plateful of the money of the finest food available. Why was Sai Baba so particular that this disciple he gave a huge sum of money for an enormous amount of food, while he himself lived on what he begged? Bara Baba was a storekeeper for the sanskaras of all those who had handed over their money to Sai Baba when they came for darshan. These sanskaras of others were wiped out by Sai when Bara Baba died. Once a known thief was caught by a police with a bag full of jewels. The thief told the police that he had gotten the gems from Sai Baba. As the inspector came to Shirdi to investigate the matter, they interrogated the fakir at length. The policeman filled out his report as he questioned the master. What is your name? He inquired. They call me Sai Baba. What was your father's name? Also Sai Baba. What was your guru's name? Vinkusha. What is your creed or religion? Kabir. What is your caste? Parvardigar. How old are you? Hundreds or thousands of years. Will you swear in court that what you say you are saying is truth? I am the truth. Do you know the accused? Yes, I know him. I know everyone. The accused says he is your devotee and he stayed with you. Is that so? Yes, all are with me, all are mine. Did you give the accused some jewels as alleged by him? Yes, I gave him them to him. What who gave who gives what to whom? If you gave the accused the jewels, how did you get them? Everything is mine. Everything has been given to me. The policemen were overwhelmed. Subsequently, the thief was cleared of his charges and the case was dropped. Sai Baba would keep a duni fire burning in the Mother of Mercy mosque each night. He would also keep a small old lamp burning in the mosque and would obtain oil by begging from different shopkeepers in Shirdi. On a particular day, however, not one shopkeeper would give him kerosene. Sai returned to the mosque and filled the lamp with water, lit it. The lamp thus burned without fuel, and when early the next morning the villagers came to know of this miracle, their faith in him was kindled, and Sai became the true center of attention in Shirdi. A perfect master sees all who are closely connected with him. One day in 1910, Sai Baba was sitting near the duni when suddenly, instead of putting wood on the fire, the master pushed his arm into the flames. A devotee rushed towards him and pulled his arm out, but it was seriously burned. When asked why he had done this, Sai explained, "One of my followers is a potter not far from here. His wife was just then working at the kiln when his daughter, with her daughter in her lap. Hearing her husband call, she got up and the child accidentally slipped into the furnace. At that moment, I thrust my arm into the fire. I did not mind these burns. The child was saved. Had I not done this, the girl would have died." After several years in Shirdi, Sai Baba had a temple built near the mosque in memory of his Guru Gopal Rao. By erecting this new temple in honor of Hindu saint next to the old Islamic mosque, it would be construed that it was a part of Sai Baba's spiritual work to unite the Hindus and Muslims spiritually. In fact, Sai Baba used to refer to his mosque, the Mother of Mercy, as a Brahmin mosque. Sometimes in the mosque, Sai Baba would have the Quran read to him by their Mohammedan followers, and sometimes in the Gopal Rao temple he would have the Aarti and Puja performed and have the Gita and Ramayana read by his Hindu followers. Sai was an unusual perfect master, for he was a unique blend of Hindu and Mohammedan spiritual characteristics, and his work with both religions signified that there is no real difference between two, for the one worship is the same. No one can determine whether Sai Baba was born in a Hindu or a Muslim, but it is certain that his spiritual upbringing was directly connected to both, because he had both Hindu and Muslim masters. Sai Baba was unique. He dressed like a Muslim, but bore the caste marks on his forehead of a Hindu. He would celebrate the holy days and festivals of both religions with equal fervor. He quoted the Quran to the delight of the Muslims, but was equally well versed in the Hindu Vedas or Shastras. On page 59, there is a picture in which Sai Baba is, the devotees are holding an umbrella over him, and the caption goes, "Sai Baba affectionately referred to by Meher Baba as grandfather at Shirdi village with 4 close disciples during his last years." To someone like Sai Baba, his own human identity and religious differences were nothing into nothing. When someone once asked him where he was born, he replied, "I have no residence. Over the years, thousands flocked to Sai Baba, many with material gain on their mind. The master once remarked about those who sought his blessings, "It is I who seek them out and bring them to me. They do not come to their own violation. Even though some may be hundreds of miles away, I draw them to me like sparrows with strings tied to their feet." He would often repeat to his devotees, "I give you what you want to, so that you will begin to want what I want to give you." My master told me to give bounteously to all who beseech me, but none of you beseech me with wisdom. My treasury is open, but none of you bring a cart to haul away that real treasure. Dig deep and take what is rightfully yours, but none of you want to take the trouble. I tell you, all who have come to me, this opportunity will not return. I am God, I am Mahalakshmi, I am Vidhoba, Ganesha, Datitre, I am Narayan. Why do you go to the Ganges river in Banaras? Hold your palms at my feet. Here flows the Ganges. Once in a glorious state, Sain declared this, his divine state. I am the attributeless one, the absolute. The universe is my abode. Brahma is my father and Maya is my mother. By their interlocking, I got this body. Those who think I resigned at Shirdi do not know the real Sai, for I am formless and everywhere. Sai Baba controlled World War One when the master would come from a mosque to the temple of Gopal Rao. His arti would be sung between the two buildings. At that time, when he was walking between the mosque and the temple, a strange light would be seen on his face. It was also noticed that he would make strange signs in the air with his fingers. This behavior continued daily for 4 years, from the start of World War One to the conclusion. During the war years, Sai Baba would often say, "I am formless and I am everywhere. I am not this body you call Sai. I am the Supreme Soul, the entire creation. I am everything and I am in everyone. I am the saints, criminals, animals, everything else. Nothing happens without my wish. My light is of God. My religion is Kabiri, perfect mastery, and my wealth lies in the blessings I alone can give." One day, while the war was raging on, Sai Baba was returning from the Lenti procession when, amidst sweet music, his eyes fell upon a particular young man as he had never fallen on anyone else. "Parvardigar," this single word, with the force of oceanic sound, he uttered as the young man fell at the old fakir's feet. Who was Sai Baba addressing? The eyes that transfixed Sai Baba's belonged to the young dazed Zoroastrian who had been kissed by Hazrat Babajan, enthroned by Narayan Maharaj, and garlanded by Tajuddin Baba. The eyes of the young man and the eyes of old fakir steadily gazed at each other, and the great word again came out of the fakir's mouth. The great word again came out of the fakir's mouth, Parvardigar. Then, from the third time, the holy word sounded from the depths of Master's godhood as he proclaimed Parvardigar, and in his heart he bowed his head before the youth man. The crowd of devotees was astonished to witness the extraordinary, significant event. Deep in its meaning, though it took place on a dusty dirt road in a poor, remote village of Maharashtra, India, in December 1915. As the crowd surrounded Sai Baba, the young man was pushed aside. Sai Baba returned to his seat while the man picked himself up and continued wandering around the road. Our ace sang out to the world, but no one heard. "Don't you recognize who it is that Sai cried out to? You too will proclaim him. You too will bow to him. He's the ancient one." As the war was ending on September 28, 1918, Sai Baba, then 80, was stricken with fever which lasted for 2 days. Afterward, the old fakir began fasting, well aware of impending death. Sai Baba had an old brick which he had used at his pillow for years. One day, the boy who cleaned the mosque dropped the brick and it broke into two. When Sai entered the mosque, upon seeing the broken brick, he exclaimed, "It is not the brick, but my fate that has been broken. The brick was my lifelong companion and assisted me in my work. It was as dear to me as my life. Now that is broken, the earthen pot of my life will also soon break." After 17 days with no food, Sai Baba collapsed at 2:30 in the afternoon and cried, "Ah, Deva, oh God!" His head leaned to the shoulder of the close disciple and he breathed his last. It was 15th October 1918, on the Hindu holy day of Dashera, which celebrates Lord Rama's victory over Ravana. Even in the end, there was a bitter dispute between his different devotees. The Hindus wanted his body to be cremated, while the Muslims wanted it to be buried. After heated argument, the body was buried, and following evening in a large Krishna temple that Sai himself had recently instructed be erected. The the building belonged to Bapu Sahib Bhuti, a wealthy devotee who promised to allow entrance to the Samadhi to both Muslims and Hindus. As the body of Sai Baba was lowered into the grave, it looked as fresh as when it was alive. The poor fakir's body had contained the uncontainable God. Sai Baba once said, "I shall be active and vigorous for even from my tomb, even after my Mahasamadhi, I shall be with you the moment you think of me." Sai Baba's words proved true since his shrine at Shirdi has become the most popular place of pilgrimage of any contemporary spiritual master in India thus far during the 20th century. O Sai, how can we repay you for what you have done for us? You brought formless Parvardigar into the form. End of chapter on one of the perfect masters, Sai Baba. We read till page number 61. Tomorrow, with Baba's grace, we'll continue reading, and tomorrow's chapter will be on Upasani Maharaj, the king of the yogis. Avtar Meher Baba ki jai. बाबा मैं चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, बाबा मैं चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, जहाँ मैं तुमको सुख लागत है, जहाँ मैं तुमको सुख लागत है, वहाँ बिन कछु नहीं चाहो, बाबा मैं चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, मेहर में चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, तुम जैसे राखो वैसे रहूं मैं, तुम जैसे राखो वैसे रहूं मैं, तुम बिन और न चाहूं कछु मैं, बाबा बाबा जपो निरंतर, मेहर मेहर जपो निरंतर, तुम पर वारी वारी जाऊं, बाबा मैं चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, दाता मैं चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, मेहर में चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं। अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय, अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय, अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय।